Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Spanish Football Podcast. I'm Phil Kitromilides, joined as ever by Sid Lowe on this Monday morning to discuss what's happened in the world of Spanish football. Hello, Sydney.
Good morning, Philip.
Busy old show we've got today because we've had 7 matches so far on Matchday 19 in La Liga EA Sports. We'll talk about some of them, but of course we also had the Spanish Supercup taking place in Saudi Arabia again, which was won by Barcelona, 3-2. They beat Real Madrid in the final. They won it last year. They've won it this year. They beat Real Madrid last year. They beat them this year as well. It was an interesting game for us to analyse, which we'll do in just a moment. Let's get you up to date, though, on what happened in Matchday 19 in La Liga EA Sports. Friday night, Sydney was on commentary for Getafe 1, Real Sociedad 2. We had 2 late goals at the Coliseum and some excitement as well. The unbeaten start to life as a Real Sociedad coach for American Pellegrino Materazzo continues. Then on Saturday, Sydney made his way up to Oviedo to see Oviedo play well, but not managed to win. They drew 1-1 with Betis at the Carlos Tartiere. Villarreal beat Alaves by 3-1 at the Estadio de la Cerámica. And Girona's recent good form continues. They beat Osasuna by 1-0 to move away from the relegation zone, a relegation zone where Valencia remain after a 1-1 draw at home to Elche. All sorts of problems at Mestalla. Then on Sunday, we were both at Vallecas, only Sid didn't come and say hello to me. I didn't even realise he was there. We both saw Rayo beat Mallorca 2-1.
I've been on a guilt trip ever since. How long's the guilt trip lasted now? It's nearly 24 hours.
It's going to last a long time. I can't believe it. You made my son cry.
I did not.
Why does Uncle Sid hate us? Why? No, he didn't even know. Levante and Espanyol played out a 1-1 draw as well. And the Monday night game could be interesting as well. Sevilla against Celta. Sydney is on co-coms for that as well. Sevilla just 3 points above the relegation zone. Celta could move 6th with a win. Thank you to all our new patrons over at patreon.com/TSFP. We've had loads of new patrons this year already. They will be getting the Monday and Friday podcasts without adverts, plus a weekly Q&A pod and a bonus pod. And there's the newsletter, the TSFP diary, and the Discord. Join us. You can sign up from €4.75 a month, or it's even cheaper if you buy an annual membership. So we'll start then by talking about the Spanish Super Cup final, Sid, which you described as a weird game and very hard to analyse properly. But give it a go.
I'm going to try and give it a go. And I suppose there is a sort of simple, if slightly very reductionist approach to this, which is to say that Barcelona are a team that know what they're doing. They're a team that have a very clear identity, and they're a team that play in a broadly similar way all the time. What Real Madrid did, of course, was to try and set up to stop that. Real Madrid had an approach that was designed to prevent Barcelona from moving the ball well, designed to offer them the opportunity to break towards Vinicius. In that sense, I suppose it was clear. The reason why it feels less clear to me is, of course, this isn't what Real Madrid always do. So This was effectively a defensive response or a tactical response, at least, to Barcelona's approach. For about half an hour, I'm going to try and give a brief description of the game, and then maybe we can start from there. So for about half an hour, almost nothing happened. Barcelona had all of the ball, but not very much happened. There was one chance for Vinicius breaking.
Real Madrid had 2 chances.
Yeah. Well, now hang on.
Okay.
Matiz, caveat here. Real Madrid had the one chance with Vinicius breakaway on the left-hand side, which was obviously very much their plan. And that was about it, although Barcelona completely dominated possession. I mean, the numbers were absurd at that point. I think it was 79-21. Then we had the drinks break. And we came back from the drinks break, and suddenly everything started happening. So you have a very clear chance for Gonzalo. You have a couple of chances for Rafinha, I think, that you get the Rafinha goal. And then Barcelona at that point threatened to completely take Madrid apart, I thought. I thought there was a period where Madrid weren't getting to the ball. You could feel the frustration creeping in as well. You could see that thing that you get where a player runs to make the challenge, doesn't get there, turns around, comes back, runs and makes another one. And by the third one, it's kind of like, you know, and so then, of course, Madrid get deeper and deeper and deeper, and Barcelona look even more dominant. But then we had those 3 mad minutes at the end of the first half. I've actually written this down because this was a game of moments and brief little flurries. Okay. So I've written this down because I quite enjoyed this. So you have 4 shots within 2 minutes and 54 seconds in the first half, immediately after that drinks break. So you got 32-18 through to 35-11. And there's 3 for Barcelona and 1 for Real Madrid, which starts with that Gonzalo one. Okay. Then you have 2 shots, 2 Courtois saves at the near post inside 42 seconds. Again, another little flurry. Then you get that madness of additional time at the end of the first half. 3 minutes, 33 seconds for 3 goals. And so at that point, you're thinking, this has gone a bit wild. And quite how this has happened, it's difficult to put your finger on. So you go in at halftime 2-2 with a feeling, in my view at least, that Barcelona are so superior to Real Madrid that it doesn't make sense that it's 2-2. I actually think the second half was different. Now, I don't think Real Madrid took control of the ball necessarily, but I thought they were far more threatening than they've been in the first half. And I thought they started to make chances. And again, you've got a little flurry. All right, 11 minutes doesn't really count as a flurry. But there's 3 really good chances for Real Madrid. A Johan Garcia save from Vinicius, a Vinicius deflected shot which Garcia saves, and that great chance for Rodrigo. And Madrid probably should have scored at least one of those 3, and they didn't. And then the game settled again, I felt, into a pattern of Barcelona being in control. I felt Madrid lost control again, or at least lost any real sense of threat again, and Barcelona score. And after the 3-2 for Rafinha, which is 72 minutes, I didn't think Real Madrid did anything. Given that they're chasing the game, I didn't think they did anything until additional time.
Yeah.
At additional time, you get 2 absolutely clear-cut chances on this game's 5 minutes added on 95:04 and 96:42. A minute and a half in which Madrid get 2 absolutely clear chances to go to extra time, and both of them go straight at Johan Garcia. And so that's the description. And why is that difficult to analyze? As I say, because you have flurries rather than an overall pattern. But if you take a step back, the overall pattern is of a Barcelona team who have all of the ball and the Madrid team who looks to break with Vinicius. And in truth, both of those approaches sort of worked. And in the end, Barcelona won. That's the bottom line.
I mean, I guess, we're using a Spanish phrase, is lo que hay. No, I mean, this is what there is, because how are Real Madrid supposed to approach this game given the players that they have? I mean, they don't have the players to control this game through possession and create chances against Barcelona. I don't think, when you look at the Barcelona midfield and you look at the Real Madrid midfield, who is going to have the ball and create chances in that?
Yeah. And this is this is why I say it's difficult to analyze, because on the face of it, it's easy to analyze. As you say, look, this is the reality of what it is. It's lo que hay. And so this is how you approach it. And I think Xabi Alonso obviously is entitled to approach it anyway that he wants. And he would argue, and I think he'd be right in terms of clear chances, that his team created enough to have possibly won this.
Well, in terms of big chances created by, as defined by Opta, they had more Opta-defined big chances than Barcelona did, more shots on target as well, more corners. But the sense of control was Barcelona's. Yeah, exactly,
and that's why it's sort of both easy and difficult to analyze at the same time, because you then do get into this kind of emotional or analytical dynamic in which you start saying, okay, but we're talking about Real Madrid, right? I'm gonna choose my team so as not to upset anyone else. You're talking about Real Madrid as if they were Oviedo. As if it's okay
why are we getting drawn into this? I mean, it's just a pragmatic approach. Like this
there you go. Right. Okay.
This is it.
Exactly.
This is it, And
but
also,
then the question is this it? Is this it? Does it need to be it? Should this be what you aspire to? Should this be the pragmatic reality? Are the players Madrid have got necessarily so much worse than Barcelona's, or so much different to
they
Barcelona's?
are in midfield.
I think that's the thing. Yeah. I mean, I think that is part of it. And you look across the midfield. Tchouaméni, who actually played at centre-back, played well.
Yeah.
Not one of Madrid's midfielders, none of them were even there yesterday, I thought. Bellingham, I'm struggling to think of anything that he did.
No, Bellingham, it was, an eye-catchingly low-key performance, if that's...
Camavinga didn't really get control of the game at any point.
No, I thought he was terrible.
In a way, the midfielder that was most effective for them was possibly Gonzalo Garcia. And I say midfielder, and everyone's going to be saying, what are you talking about? He's a forward. But his role was partly to try and prevent Frenkie de Jong from playing. And actually, I thought Frenkie de Jong played really well, by the way, until that slightly bizarre red card at the end. I say bizarre because of his decision to do what he did, not because the decision was wrong. And the decision itself was right from the referee. But I sort of look at Madrid and you're right, it's pragmatic. But it's kind of... It's uneasy, doesn't it? Because we're talking about Real Madrid here. That's why.
We are. It's true. Here's the thing, though. Real Madrid coming out of this game having competed against Barcelona, despite the sense and the feeling that they're inferior in footballing terms, they actually competed. They could easily have taken this game to penalties. I mean, easily. And yet maybe that's not so much of a surprise because the teams that they have struggled against this season are not the teams that approach the game like Barcelona do. So if you look at the previous, so what are their previous decent performances in the last couple of months? And there haven't really been any apart from away to Athletic Club and against Olympiacos, two sides that press really high and leave loads of spaces for you to run in. And it's true that Barcelona weren't playing with quite as high a line last night, and they did look a little bit more pragmatic themselves, and I think they weren't playing quite as suicidally with that high line, but still they leave spaces, and if you leave spaces, Real Madrid do have the players to hurt you. Where they have struggled this season is trying to break down teams with a low block because they don't have the footballing brains in that team to do
it. Perfect. And so we come to that question of pragmatism, and this is what there is. It's like so then you ask your question, this was okay in this game, except of course the bottom line is it wasn't okay. You didn't win the Super Cup. Right. But in other games, is it okay? One thing I'm going to say, actually, I think a slightly important caveat that I feel like I want to add.
Caveat me up, baby.
And that is the performance of Vinicius. And Vinicius was brilliant. But here's the thing. Here's the caveat I want to bring into here. Because in the context of what you're talking about, the high line with Barcelona, and as you say, Barcelona didn't play quite as high as sometimes they do and running. But here's the key thing for me. Vinicius didn't spend this game running into the space behind Barcelona. He didn't.
He ran at
He spent this exactly. Yeah. That's for me is the really big difference. This was a game in which Vinicius was not the beneficiary of balls over the back. He was the balls behind Barcelona. He was the person taking Real Madrid behind Barcelona. And I thought he was very, very good indeed. Again, that asked questions. He did this performance without Mbappe on the pitch. I think we've seen this year enough from Mbappe to say that he can adapt to the middle of the pitch. But we do still need to see a really good performance with those two together. I don't know. This is why I say it's difficult to analyse, because I think on the face of it, if I analyse this, I can say, yeah, Madrid did a really good job, a good pragmatic job and all the rest of it. But the bottom line is they still didn't win it. I would say that the two goals they got at the end of the first half were basically out of nothing. So you go in at halftime 2-2, but really and truly at that point, I mean, in fairness, they had two really good chances. One where Gonzalo goes clean through, and that was a weird one because on that moment, Barcelona were too high and it was very easy and it was a very simple ball. And the one that Vinicius carried through. But, the goals, I don't know. I find it hard to be convinced by what Madrid did at the same time as I can see that what they did was kind of quite good and probably could have won and could and maybe even should have won them this game.
Another caveat that I'll throw in is the injuries. Obviously, Barcelona managed to field pretty much their strongest starting 11. I think only Gavi missing and Ter Stegen, and Real Madrid missing some absolutely key players, not least Kylian Mbappe, who wasn't fit to really feature in this game at all, but came on for the last 15 minutes. Eder Militao, their best defender, is out. Dani Carvajal, Trent, Rudiger, Fede Valverde went off, etc., etc.
I think Carvajal's massive, by the way. I think. I mean, we talk about all these other players.
About 5'8", but
yeah. And all these players are important. But I think the impact of Carvajal's absence is really, really significant.
Let's talk about Rafinha, MVP of the game, MVP of the Super Cup. Just another superb performance from him with two goals, and not just the goals, but the energy and the leadership. I mean, the absolute leader on the pitch for Barcelona is Rafinha, and we shouldn't underestimate that. In his absence earlier on in the season, we're seeing maybe why Barcelona was struggling a little bit, because Joan Garcia wasn't there at one end of the pitch and Rafinha wasn't there at the other end of the pitch, and now that both are there, the whole thing looks a lot better.
Yeah. Rafinha, in the 9 games he didn't play, they only won 5 of them, which, all right, is okay, but it's 4 games in which they didn't win, including losing to PSG and Real Madrid and Sevilla. Since he's come back, I think I'm right in saying that it's 11 wins and 1 defeat in 12. The defeat was at Stamford Bridge, and it's true that Barcelona were terrible that day. And so, maybe you can say, well,
10 men.
And play with, yes. But I think Rafinha, at the risk of saying the things that we've said before, I think is so important because he imposes character on the team, and he's contagious, and he's the one that drags everyone through it. And if you are going to play the way that Barcelona play, you need him. Now, you can maybe play a different way, and Rafinha wouldn't be important. But if you're going to play the way that this Barcelona play, you absolutely need him. And we've talked a lot, and, let's get the couch out, shall we, and play amateur psychologist. I think lots and lots of things have happened with Rafinha that have been important over the last 2 or 3 years. And I think a lot of them are about emotions as much as about football. And I think that he said it himself I think he may even have said it again last night, but the importance of Flick in terms of Flick giving him confidence and making him feel part of it. And he clearly needed to feel that kind of embrace. We've talked about this before, but just briefly to touch upon it again, I think when he was made fourth captain, and it's only fourth captain, by the way, you could see from the things that he said and the way that he responded that really meant something to him. And that really played. And what it did is it did two things. It reflected his character, because this is why they voted him in. He didn't expect it. And it was because they saw things in him. They saw leadership in him. And then it also enhanced that character, because once he'd been given the captain's armband, which of course most of the games he hadn't been given it, because there were usually one of the other three was also on the pitch. But it's like he took upon himself that this means something. This is responsibility. So I'm going to carry this team. And my favorite thing that Rafinha said was something he said about 4 or 5 weeks ago, just after he came back. And he said after the game, which I must confess, I can't remember which one it is now. I'm actually about to go and look for it because I've been thinking about this quite a lot over the last few weeks. He said after the game, my teammates probably look at me and think, why is he talking so much? This guy's a pesado, a pain in the ass. But that is what I have to do. And I think, it's simplistic, but I think that in a nutshell is Rafinha. And he's
a pain in the ass.
He's a pain in the ass. Yeah.
In the best possible way. Listen, there is loads more that we could talk about, but we want to move on because, dear listener and viewer of the Spanish Football Podcast, you know that we are not just about Barcelona and Real Madrid. So we will move on. But if there's anything that you want us to talk about, send us a question for tomorrow's Q&A pod on patreon.com/TSFP, and we will answer them. We're expecting quite a few questions for tomorrow's Q&A pod, so make sure you're signed up and you get yours in. All right, so let's talk about other matches that took place this weekend, and let's start with the Friday night game, Sid, that you were watching. Most people weren't. Getafe won, Real Sociedad.
You mean I was speaking into the void? I was.
Yeah,
I think I probably was, to be honest.
Quite possibly not too many people were watching this, but maybe they were. There was probably quite a lot of interest in the US because Real Sociedad, managed by Pellegrino Materazzo, who had his first game in charge last week and managed a very creditable 1-1 draw with Atletico Madrid, and a 2-1 win at Getafe is a really, really good result. He had a difficult start to his campaign, to his managerial life, because he had that game against Atletico Madrid, then away to Getafe. They're taking on Barcelona. They've got a Basque derby coming up as well, but 4 points from 6. What can you tell us about what you saw of Materazzo's Real Sociedad on Friday?
I think what I saw of them was an adaptability, and it's true that it's possible that I see this partly conditioned by what he said. But if you take what he said pre-game, Materazzo, and then you see what you saw in the game, and obviously the context of this was a Getafe team with only 13 outfield players available. First team, 13 outfield players available, with no central defenders. Officially, no central defenders. You've got fullbacks playing at centre back, and we'll come on to this in a minute, by the way, because Bordalas brought this up again post game. But I think you've got to take that into account. It's true. But if you listen to the way that Materazzo talked about it pre-game, and then you see what Real Sociedad did, I think what you see is a realism and an adaptability. And maybe this takes us to our discussion about Xabi Alonso and the approach to Barcelona, by the way, which is to say that this is Getafe. And so we know that the game will be, what do you call planteado in English? The game will kind of be the framing of the game, the setting of the scene of this game, the way this game is conceived of by Getafe is different to the way that Atletico Madrid came and played last weekend at Anoeta. And that you have to be able to compete on their terms, at least to begin with. Now, put in very simple terms, he came up with this phrase, Materazzo, which was fight first, football second. Or worse, that effect. I can't remember. I think it was first you've got to fight, then you've got to play. To use an old English phrase, you've got to earn the right to play. You can't go to Getafe and think, well, we're better than them, aren't we? And what he essentially said is, if we match them for those things, we've got good footballers. Which isn't to say Getafe don't, but obviously, comparatively, they don't. That's a reality.
Fight for your right to party, Sid.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Fight for your right to party. And that's essentially what they did. And I thought
fight is a good word. I was just checking the statistics. 17 fouls committed by both teams in this game. 34 fouls in a La Liga game.
By the way, and that was in a game in which the referee was trying to let it go.
Oh,
The
good luck
referee
with
was
that.
now. I personally, I mean, this is a slight aside, but I personally think conceptually we get it wrong with Getafe. We sometimes assume that because Getafe play the way they do, referees should give every foul because that's the only way to sort of stop it. But actually, that's what Getafe want. They want the game stopped. So I actually think the best approach to it, and obviously a referee shouldn't have the approach which is how can I best screw up Getafe. That's not what I'm saying. Although I know I realize it sounds like that. But what I mean is that if you think that Getafe are trying to utilize fouls to their advantage, and you think, well, in which case we've got to blow them every time they give them. No, they want you to give the fouls. They want the game to stop. And actually, the referee, I thought, tried at times to let it go. It wasn't as confrontational as I thought it would be. It was a lot of little fouls rather than confrontational. But Real Sociedad definitely stood up to that. And then very nearly got Getafe. It was extraordinary, really. They conceded in the 90th minute. You thought that has come from literally nowhere. But then they Getafe back by getting another one in the, 95th or 96th?
Double Getafe reversal with that goal from, was it Oyarzabal in the 96th minute?
No, it wasn't. It
was
Aramburu. Yeah, for a moment there, my head went blank. Yeah,
John Mikel. Yes. So there we go. All right, that was Real Sociedad beating Getafe.
Sorry, just briefly, because I should just say it because I prefaced it.
Go on then.
After the game, Bordelas said, "We can't carry on like this. I wouldn't wish this upon anyone.
Why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this to me?" That's what he was basically saying.
Yeah, basically said, "I do not deserve this. I do not deserve this. We can't go on like this." And he used this analysis, which was people say always get something out of nothing, but you keep sharpening the pencil. Eventually, there's no pencil left.
What does that mean?
Well, it means, so you've got this pencil and there's not very much there, but you sharpen it, you get a point and you can keep getting points and you've got this thing that works, but then the point goes down, but don't worry, keep sharpening. You said, yeah, but if you keep sharpening, if you reach the point where there's just a little nubby bit of the pencil, only the little eraser is left, the rubber is left. I know it was a bizarre reference, but basically you're saying there's nothing.
What does he mean? He hasn't got any players. Yeah.
He means he's been worn down to nothing. Yeah.
Right.
It's the Bordelas version of Harry Redknapp's bare bones, I suppose, isn't it? And his is a pencil stub.
It's strange that you would treat the greatest ever manager in your history like this, isn't it? From Getafe?
Yes and no. Yes and no. Because I think the first thing to say is you've just used the phrase, treat your greatest ever manager like this. It is your greatest ever manager. Everyone recognises this. But what's the treatment we're talking about?
Bring him some players that
right,
he desperately
okay.
wants and
right,
needs.
okay. So let's return to a phrase that we've used already 3 or 4 times in this pod. Es lo que hay. Bring in the players with what resources? Bring in what players? How do you pay for them? Which players do you want him to bring? This is the thing. I do think, for what it's worth, Bordelas is right in that he's not been given a huge amount. He has been left with a very short squad. But, of course, the reality here is that Getafe, what else?
I don't know, man. Well, that's what sporting directors are there for.
Exactly.
Go and find some gems in the transfer market and see what you
But for example, to put this into context for everybody, in the summer they had, was it 5 players or maybe 6? I can't remember now.
6
without
that weren't registered.
They weren't registered until they managed to sell Uche. Yeah. Now, here's the big problem. They've sold Uche, but they're not actually going to get the money for Uche. So that 20 million euros that they put on their books, which allowed them to register those players, is about to be taken off their books.
Yeah, they're in serious trouble.
Yeah, they really are. They really, really are.
Let's move on. We've dedicated quite enough time to
sorry.
The podcast.
That's a lot. We are the Getafe football podcast.
We will never be that, Sydney. Tell us about.
We will.
Tell us about Oviedo against Betis, because you were there. Now, I've written a little bit about Betis and in particular Cucho Hernandez in the newsletter.
He was brilliant, wasn't he? Wow,
he was. So we don't need to dwell too much on that because patrons can read all about Cucho and his brilliant performance. But you were there in the posh seats, Sid, at the Carlos Tartiere. You were there, corporate hospitalitying it up.
I was. I mean, I it's not something. First of all, it's not something I'm proud of. Secondly, it's not something. Actually, in truth, it's not something I.
You could do it every week, there, Sid. You could literally go there every week, and you don't. So credit to you.
Well, it also, to be honest, this is why it happened, because essentially I'd essentially been given tickets in the only place where there were tickets available. Yeah, and so it's a little weird. I just the best thing about this game is that Oviedo scored a goal.
They hadn't scored a home goal for nearly 4 months. The 25th of September was the last time they'd scored a goal at home, and it was a brilliant goal by Elias Chada as well.
It was a brilliant goal by Elias Chaya, and let me make this personal just for a moment. my son has now seen a goal in the first division, and he hadn't until this weekend. Until this weekend, his record was seen 8 games, seen wins 0, seen draws 0, seen defeats 8, seen goals scored against you 18, seen goals scored for you 0. So this weekend, he got to see a goal and a point in the first division for the first time in his life.
I think you need to stop taking him to games, Sid. I think he's the
No,
problem.
well, that's what he was saying. I'm really glad that this weekend broke that, because he was starting to say, well, maybe it's me.
Yeah.
And I did say to him, it's not, because my record wasn't very much better, because I'd seen 9 games, no wins, 1 draw, 8 defeats, and only 1 goal, which was that amazing Alberto Reina goal against Barcelona, a game in which he wasn't able to go to.
Third consecutive draw for Oviedo under the new manager, Guillermo Almada. I think they're playing better, Sid, but the problem is they're playing better, and there's 2 games in a row that they should have won and they didn't.
Yes, and it's not enough. And you know, you're in that position where the draws simply aren't enough. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's 13 points. Now, if we're drawing the basic conclusion, which is that the threshold for relegation is 40. Last year, actually, Leganés went down with 40, so it might not be the threshold. So 13 points. The threshold is 40. Even I can do that maths. It's 27.
We're at the halfway point of the season.
27 points you need in the second half of the season. To be honest, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You're going to have to win 7 games.
Yeah. Only 1 or 2.
It doesn't happen. Also in this game, I mean, you rightly pointed this out to me. I was quite pleased with how Oviedo played in patches. I thought Elias, who scored the goal, was very, very good indeed. But it is true that Betis had 3 or 4 really good chances. They hit the bar twice. As we mentioned earlier, Cucho Hernandez was fantastic. Aaron Escandé made his now customary brilliant save, and a couple of not quite so brilliant ones, but still good ones. But I thought that once Oviedo went into the lead, I actually thought they played really well for a while, and then there was a period at which I thought, forgive me for taking it to this, but I'm going to, and it sounds like a bit of a rant. It's not supposed to. There was a period at which that game was calling out for control, I thought, and it upset me a little bit, because if ever there was a time to put Santi Cazorla on the pitch, it's then. And if he didn't come on in that scenario, I don't think he's coming on again. Or at least
he was warming up.
He was warming up, yeah.
And then he conceded, and he did not come on. So. No. Yes, it's a shame, but let's see how Oviedo get on in the second half of the season. Probably not very well, but you know, hope springs eternal, Sid.
Yeah,
hope springs
still scrabbling around looking for 3 teams that might be worse than us. I'm not sure there are 3.
We thought there might be a couple of them at Vallecas on Sunday. Rayo against Mallorca. We were both there. We don't need to talk too much about Rayo. What about Mallorca? I thought, no juega nada Mallorca.
No, they don't, do they? I mean, I'll be honest, and obviously one of the reasons why I didn't come and find you was because I was quite busy. So I was sitting there with my laptop trying to work and sort of semi-watch the game at the same time, and I sort of didn't do a very good job of it. But Mallorca don't play a huge amount of football. I mean, they play. The goal was brilliant, by the way. The cross from Tony Lado is fantastic for Murici.
And they should play more football. That's the thing, because they've got players to do it, I think.
Yeah, they have.
With
Sergi Darder, who only came on as a sub, Mateo Joseph, the fact that they were playing Lato on the wing, it tells you something. Although, I don't think it's fair to put it all on him. They should possibly play a little bit more. They're not getting good results. They haven't started the new year well. They've gone back into a position where it looks like the relegation is a reality. Whereas 3 weeks ago, I think they probably thought they'd taken a step away from it. They're a little unfortunate in this game insofar as the penalty given against them is absolutely comic. But they're not great.
That's despite Vedat Murici scoring his 11th goal of the season. They are wildly dependent on him. He scored 52% of their goals this season. That's even more than Mbappe at Real Madrid. So they're very, very dependent on their big Kosovan striker. All right, before we go, this is what happened in the Segunda. Leaders Racing were beaten 3-2 at home by Zaragoza. Las Palmas are now level with Racing at the top. They drew 1-1 with Depor. Almeria are third. They drew 2-2 at Mirandés. And Castellón drew 0-0 at Granada. So that means none of the top 5 won. Cadiz did. They're 6th. They beat Sporting 3-2. There's 16 action this week, so lots for us to look forward to, including Atletico Madrid going to Deportivo La Coruña, Barcelona at Racing Santander, and Real Madrid travelling to Albacete. We'll be over at patreon.com/TSFP for the rest of the week with a bonus pod coming up on Thursday to discuss the Copa del Rey action. Before that, the Q&A pod tomorrow. And if you're not going to listen to any of that, all right, fine, but make sure you listen to the Friday preview pod, which will be available here on Friday, looking ahead to what's coming up next weekend. Thanks for listening, amigos. Adios.
Cheerio.